Episode 1. I can tell you the exact moment my life began to fall apart. The moment where everything came tumbling down, and I no longer knew what my place was in the world. The familiar instantly became foreign, and I was left with nowhere to go. It all started when my boyfriend had found his mate. Scott and I had been dating since I was 16, almost a year of time was spent having him by my side. Scott happened to be the alpha son. I had grown up with Scott and spent my childhood training at his side. When I turned 16, the feelings of friendship quickly blossomed into romance. Scott was 17, able to find his mate from he turned 19. I was so gullible back then, hanging on his every word. I was so sure we would be mates. We were destined after all. I had this same delirious mindset up until his 19th birthday party, the day where everything crashed and burned. Scott picked me up from my house around 8 p.m. He pulled up to my house in his shiny Mustang. I'd often joke that he loved his car more than me. There were a lot of things Scott loved more than me. My mom, dad, and older brother weren't fond of me dating their soon-to-be alpha. They knew the risks of getting involved with another wolf, but like a child, I had ignored them. I hopped into Scott's car, not thinking twice that he hadn't opened the door for me. "I thought I told you to wear the blue dress." Scott sighed, rolling his eyes. I frowned at him and looked down at the black dress I was wearing. I didn't see anything wrong with it. "I told you I didn't like that one." I frowned, wondering what got him in such a bad mood. "Whatever. You know I'm just looking out for you." Scott shrugged. "You look like some goth girl when you wear black." I rolled my eyes at his bad mood, knowing he would cheer up once he had a few drinks in him. Scott never liked when I wore black. He would always say I looked goth. I didn't see a problem with looking goth. Some of the clothes they wore were really cute. I'm sure it didn't help that I had straight, raven-colored hair. Scott had told me hundreds of times how much better I would look as a blonde, but I couldn't bring myself to dye my hair. I was the only one in the family who had gotten my grandma's raven hair. I sat in silence as Scott drove, listening to him openly complain about the neighboring packs. Scott seemed to have a problem with just about everybody. The alpha from the Dawn pack is asking for my help. He picked a fight with the Crescent pack and needs my help to get out of it. Scott rolled his eyes, running his hand through his sandy blonde hair. I felt my eyes widen. The Crescent pack? Why the heck would he pick a fight with them? The Crescent pack were one of the baddest packs around. Legend says they started out as a pack of all rogues and quickly expanded once Alpha Gabriel came into power. Now, Alpha Gabriel's grandson had taken over, and it seemed the cruelty ran in the family. "Please, Daisy," Scott scoffed. "It's just a stupid pack, and their alpha is just a man. A man with a lot of territory." I mumbled, knowing that the Crescent pack held the most territory in the world. They were the biggest pack our kind had ever seen. Not for long. Scott smirked. I didn't like the feeling that bubbled in my stomach at his words. "What do you dash?" I started but was cut off. "Enough of that. It's not important." Scott dismissed me with a wave of his hand. We pulled into the parking lot of the nightclub, and Scott turned to face me. "This is important." Scott smirked, pulling me in and pressing his lips against my own. I giggled like a stupid schoolgirl and leaned into the kiss, loving the butterflies that swarmed my stomach. "Are you finally going to say yes tonight?" Scott smirked, tugging on a piece of my long hair. I found myself smiling back, ready to give him the news he had been waiting for. It was only a matter of hours until Scott was able to find his mate. He had been nagging me for months now to finally sleep with him, to let him take my virginity. Each time I had turned him down, waiting for this night. Once we officially became mates, I would give myself to him entirely. "I'm ready." I bit my lip, looking up into his cerulean eyes. His smirk deepened as he pulled me in for another kiss. "It's about damn time." I giggled as he grumbled. We went inside the club and met up with our friends. I linked my arm through Chelsea's and talked to her over the pounding music. Chelsea was one of those people who was easy to hate and harder to like. I realized later on in my life that I had been the same as her. Shallow, bitch, I mean even. "Hey, bitch." Chelsea smirked, flipping her honey-colored hair behind her shoulder. I smirked back at her, taking in the baby pink dress she was wearing. "Hey yourself." I happily clung to Scott's side while he talked to his closest friends Ethan and Isaac. Ethan was your typical asshole, always jumping around from girl to girl. He had even tried to get with me at one point. Ethan had a problem with personal space and would often try to push any kind of boundaries he set. Isaac was 19 and had already found his mate, but he didn't seem too attached to her. He'd often go out with Ethan and Scott, doing only goddess knows what. You ready to find your mate? Ethan teased, waggling his eyebrows at a group of human girls that passed by. Hopefully she's hot. Scott smirked, giving my shoulder a small squeeze as he glanced down at me. I rolled my eyes at him and playfully smacked his shoulder. I eyed Scott's drink enviously. He never liked when I drank alcohol. It didn't fit his picture-perfect narrative. I turned towards Chelsea and struck up a conversation. If I happen to be Scott's mate, hope you won't hold it against me. Chelsea winked, giving Scott a sly glance. I rolled my eyes at her. Please, if anything, your mate will be Ethan. I broke out into giggles at the disgusted look on her face. Not a chance. Been there, done that. Never again. Chelsea practically shrieked, fanning herself with her hand. EW, you slept with him? I fake gagged. She rolled her eyes at me as if I were a petulant child. Well, duh. Who hasn't? She scoffed. Me. I haven't.
I smuggler her.
Well, that's because the purity princess is saving herself for her mate. Chelsea cooed dramatically, but I knew she was making fun. Jealousy doesn't suit you. I stuck my tongue out at her. Just then, Scott ripped himself from my side hard enough to make me stumble. What the hell, babe? I snapped, looking at him in surprise. Do you smell that? I heard him murmur to himself. I watched, open-mouthed, as my entire world crumbled. A tall, long-legged girl made her way out of the woman's bathroom and locked eyes with Scott. Even with the thumping music sending vibrations scattering across my skin, you could hear a pin drop. Oh shoot. I could hear Ethan's amused voice, but it sounded like he was in a bubble. Scott and the mystery woman locked eyes and ran into each other's arms. Like some kind of bad romance movie. I couldn't hear anyone else now, couldn't focus on anyone's face. I could have sworn I saw Ethan laughing and Chelsea with a sly smirk on her face. The only one who didn't seem amused was Isaac. I could feel my entire body trembling as my brain fought to process what was happening. Scott had found his mate. My boyfriend had found his mate, and it wasn't me. Then, like any completely rational teenage girl, I ran. I didn't stop running until I was deep into the forest, my lungs burning from being deprived of oxygen. My wolf, Maya, was furious. She was hesitant about Scott in the beginning, but was eventually won over. She thought he was our mate too. While I was heartbroken and fighting back tears, Maya was seething. I closed my eyes and allowed her to take over, making her promise that she wouldn't go and hunt Scott down. Maya carried us farther into the woods, and I allowed myself to sink into the furthest depths of her mind. My head was still racing with what had just happened. I wanted to turn everything off for just a few moments. I couldn't handle it. Hours and hours had passed, but I hardly noticed. I drifted off as Maya hunted and continued running.
Full story is available at novelpalace.com. Click the link in the comment section to get it free.